Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome one and all to another live stream with myself and, of course, the gentleman who sits himself right in the middle of it all as far as property sales are concerned, Hamish McLay, a man who spends more of his time wondering what the hell is going on in central government than most people do. But I was hoping for some cheery news for you. Do you have any for me, Hamish?
I do. The government are on holiday. It's fantastic. They can't mess anything up.
Well, I was going to say I didn't want to say that, but it is the truth. If they're not around, it's less likely of things getting screwed up.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And something else to celebrate today. We have sunshine. We have sunshine here, which compared to the sad thing is that I do love this particular sort of time of year, Yuletide and all the rest of it. There's a lot of great things to be said for nature, and nature very wisely takes things sort of steady. This particular sort of time of year is not exactly sort of dormant because things are sort of going on in the background, and it's sort of getting ready. It's sort of in preparation because of mind you, the weather. It doesn't have an impact on the weather in that it prevents sunshine and all the rest of it. But a lovely crisp winter's day is something to enjoy. Whereas when it's all dour and damp and particularly around here, because it's very flat around here. So once the old sort of cloud cover sort of comes down, and sort of, there's little places called Marsh Gibbon and all the rest of it around here. And they wonder why it's called Marsh Gibbon. Then it sort of floods, and then they choose to build houses close by the flooding.
Then you understand why it's called Marsh Gibbon, right?
But no, it's a great thing. It's the time of year is sort of fairly good. What was absolutely amazing, they had this fantastic notification of house sales for Boxing Day, and I wonder actually what proportion of the population went out on this wondrous Boxing Day to buy houses.
I wouldn't, under normal conditions, I would have thought it would be close to zero, but apparently not.
Well, it depends who you listen to. And what they do, I don't know if they did this year because I don't watch television, as you well know, but did they have all these exotic sort of sales going on all over the countryside with all sorts of people queuing up for mad hours to getting out there on Boxing Day? They did? Or did you not watch it either?
No, as far as I know, there was a push for Boxing Day sales of houses. There were people on viewings on Boxing Day of all days.
Well, yeah, I guess you've got nothing better to do. I just wonder because you know how they used to, when I watched television some years ago, they used to sort of demonstrate and you watch the news and they show all these people queuing up and not so much, pretty well fighting each other as they try to get themselves through the door and get their sort of goodies for 10% or whatever the daft price is there. I don't think they do that anymore now.
There's I think it probably still happens to a certain extent, but I think they downplay consumerism on the news these days.
Oh, right. No, I just wondered if they did about the houses because I certainly wasn't going out myself on Boxing Day looking to sort of find out.
I know of at least one person who did. So,
did. Oh, magic. And I mean, it's sort of quite interesting. Do you think we'll have massive sales through the month of January as a consequence?
Probably not.
You're quite right. It will not happen. Most people are actually sort of on holiday. Land Registry are operating, for 2 days, sort of in short staff, and they're sort of, I don't know quite what they're doing. I did pick up on something that Land Registry have done something positive and constructive. In fact, they did it 10 years or so ago, but not a lot of people know about this.
Okay.
Instead of telling about the constructive things they've done, they have this habit of celebrating things that they haven't done to suggest that they have done something. Does that make sense?
So what have they done? What have they done, Hamish? I mean.
No, it was this thing. It's called it's the Land Registry's free property alert service, and
right.
It's very good. Now, unfortunately, it's like all things in life. No, it's free property alert service. It might have been free, but I did find out somewhere that it costs it did cost £40 or something to get yourself registered. But however, you can actually nominate as many properties as you like, up to, I think, a volume of 10. So if you've got 10 properties, but the good thing about it now, this suits absent landlords, because very often people who are investing in a property, they are absent landlords. They themselves aren't sort of present there, and somebody actually sort of is there. And we do have an awful lot of people abroad who do invest in properties in the UK. They might be experts. They might actually be people who are living in Singapore temporarily or somewhere on a Lulu, if it's anywhere where the weather's warm. And they get sunshine, too.
As a bonus.
Now, the great thing is, by actually nominating, and you put the application through, and it comes up with land registry. If anybody, because you may recollect that there's land property sales can actually be the subject of quite significant fraud if we don't look out for what's doing, which is why, of course, we recognise and we prefer the legal profession to actually sort of work them, which is why in many respects you're far better off with a solicitor, because they can keep their eyes on things a little bit better. Something else will come up, which I'll refer to rather for that. But what actually happens, if anybody, and we have heard of this in certain instances, is somebody will actually sell the property and they're not the legal owner. And there was sort of a couple of years back particularly, and it was suggested that it was somebody who had sort of knowledge of what goes on at land registry to enable them to do it. Now, if anybody puts in an application to change anything to do with the property registration, automatically the person that's registered it, and if your solicitor's working on your behalf, it will go through to them, and will notify them that an application has been made to change registration details. Now, that is quite significant. If you're sat in Honolulu, basking, are they basking in the sunshine this time? They certainly would be if they were in Australia. They wouldn't be looking after their property. They'd be celebrating on the beach, wouldn't they? They'd be having a barbecue.
I would be, certainly. Yeah.
They were looking at it sort of, I wonder what's happening on my property. But if they get a notification, their solicitor, the indication is changed. And that's really good. And that's really positive. That's very, very constructive.
Does that happen? Does that happen a lot? Is that an increasing thing that people try and re-register properties onto themselves?
Well, they can actually. What can happen? Various applications get put in, and what it would do. And there was one significant sort of case. I think it was a property. Somebody was resident outside of the UK. They were British. And somebody had actually put in an application to actually change the deed of ownership on the property. And the property was, well, I think it was over £300,000 worth of property. They put this application, but it wasn't actually the owner. But as a consequence of the fact that they had this, the property alert service set up, notification went through the solicitor, and hang on, lo and behold, the transaction was stopped and it was actually prevented from happening. It's a nice little safeguard there just to have sort of in there, because there can be various things that go on. So really, that's something
it's new. I thought this had been around for a while, this sort of thing.
Well, it has, but nobody's told anybody about it. It because it's recommended by the Law Society, doesn't necessarily mean it. Because I remember when we first got going, for the first sort of couple of years, they were saying things like, you should have an environmental report. You should have an environmental report. But solicitors weren't, again, solicitors were adverse to change. They don't like all this sort of change coming up. I mean, they would probably have argued quite reasonably then. So, look, we're not experts on the environment. What can we advise? And they can just advise people to look at what it says in the environmental report. And they have carried out due diligence in that respect. If they say, look, we have got this environmental report, and this is why it's very, and it's so easy to do now. Get the environment report that contains climate change. Not all environment reports do, but best to make sure your solicitor gets one that does contain it, because it does help to know what could be happening in 20 years' time if you've got a 25-year mortgage. Makes a lot of practical sense. So that's two certain things that get an environmental research with climate report on it. And also get your solicitor, because what tends to happen, of course, the application gets put in. It's one of those sad, everything has to go through before the registration documentations get changed.
Right.
Because up until that particular point in time, it has the previous owner.
Right.
And you need that's one of the things that is checked out, of course, is the guy that's selling it, does it have his name on the property? That's why this property alert scheme is quite a handy thing to have, particularly if you're letting a property out. If you're told that there's an application is put into, could it be one of your sort of residents in there trying to take over ownership of the property whilst they were residents, whilst they were letting that property from you?
Right.
So it's quite a clever thing to actually sort of have. But so I thought, now that is good. That's positive. So I thought, well, let's have a look into it. And what I came up with all these pages and pages of queries of people still. And there was one of them which actually sort of said, hey, look, this thing's been going on for over 2 years now. Our registration, in fact, it's 26 months. In 2021, it was actually changed. And we want to remortgage the property, and our deal runs out in mid-December. What's happened? Well, 10 days ago, was that mid-December? Just beyond it, saying we are now looking into it.
It's about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. About 14 days ago. Yeah.
So the mortgage offer is dead now. It's dead in the water. And there was another one sort of saying that there was a cash buyer coming up, and they needed to actually sort the whole thing out before Christmas. And but it had to have the pre-appropriate registration documents. Did it have them? There was no update, so I can't tell you, but I doubt very much if it did have, because we are still going back. And although we have been told that by first or second quarter of next year, the waiting time is going to be down to allegedly 12 months,
right,
opposed to 2 years. We shall see what's happening. I mean, let's move away from that, because that's not helpful. But at least Land Registry have done one thing that's sort of fairly useful.
All right. So looking forward to the new year, do we have any Easter eggs coming up? Is there something that you think we should be casting our eyes on?
I think, unfortunately, we still have a government which is reticent about helping people. So it's not really doing anything about social housing. It's not doing anything about affordable properties.
Right.
And the councils could take an element of control here. There are a number of organisations about there. And of course, we know Chris himself from Root Homes. He's very, very much on the side of trying to get social housing sort of on the move. The government really aren't that enthusiastic for some strange reason. They're not putting pressure on the councils.
Why is that?
To maximise their profit. I would have thought they would be interested in getting investment.
It seems counterintuitive that they don't want to do it. If anything, people like Chris are taking the problem away from them, I would have thought.
They're supplemented in a way. It's because of the likes of people like sort of Chris and Root Homes that some aspects of social housing are being maintained effectively. And as we were speaking about when we had our last quorum, when we had both Chris and Juliet sort of available here, we could actually see a distinct advantage and some positives in that sort of the planning scenario, whereby if they wanted to convert a house, so if you like, either two small families or two peoples could get homes, as opposed to just one person sort of getting
right.
homes.
Right.
There could be advantage in that particular sort of aspect there. And of course, people like Chris would be helping out within that particular sort of within that particular scenario.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, what he and his team are doing are intrinsic to its success, I would have thought at the moment, because
I would like to think what we're saying. You see, nature goes through its phases, and it's understandable. One of the great things we can say about nature, we know that as it comes blossoming forth, we're going to actually start seeing, before terribly long, we'll actually sort of see snowdrops and things like that starting to grow. And if we get a really, really mild January, we might even get daffodils. So nature's, if you like, nature's taking its pause and it's moving forward. Now, sadly, it doesn't really happen in governmental circles. I think, but I mean, we can't just blame the UK government. I think worldwide we've got a shortage of political leaders. There's nobody really standing up that we could actually turn around and say these guys are working for humanity generally. It doesn't show. It doesn't sort of seem to come across. And one of the sad things is, whereas last year we could actually sort of see that there was much. Oh, that wasn't a turkey. I didn't know what the heck that was. But anyway, that was
your turkey needs basting, I think.
If it was Alexa or somebody saying something to me, I could sort of understand it because I can ask Alexa. Alexa, what was that about?
That was In Silence by Minado.
Oh, right, okay. I don't know if that came, but I haven't got a clue what she's talking about. Which is, I think, sadly, we have a world community which has a significant shortage of leaders and sort of people stepping forward to do anything constructive. Unfortunately, the Americans don't appear to have a politician available. There certainly isn't one acting on behalf of the EU, and we certainly don't have one in there. I mean, I think one of the sad things is, and I don't know quite, it might have been a save face situation to acquire our current Prime Minister, but he's not actually sort of doing anything for, communities at large. But we
seem to be in a bit of an impasse, really.
Yeah, and I think that's what's happening. Whereas what we actually sort of see, there is opportunity for people because there are properties available for investors. They are looking to do things and achieve things, and therefore there is opportunity. A little bit, it's not the easiest because we know the mortgage rates and things went up, and sadly, some poor souls, they've still got to renew mortgages because they were at a fixed rate for a time period. So they've still got that struggle to go through. That hasn't happened yet. There's still another 2 to 3 years to go with that. But there are investment opportunities. I do actually see quite a constructive. I think 2023 actually was fairly good for many property sort of people who were looking.
Right.
I think the biggest impact was on people who had to sort of remortgage because the time was up on their existing mortgage. But as we know, and we'll bring them on board, we'll get a couple of those advisors sort of on board to actually, so we can help out some of the listeners in terms of what's going on relative to actually renewal.
And I think it might be relevant at this point to mention our property quorum, which will be happening once every 2 weeks, hopefully starting next week on Thursday, whereby myself acting as MC with Hamish, with Chris, and with Juliet.
Yes.
Juliet, who will be talking, who are respectively, Juliet is an accomplished property solicitor, understands conveyancing law better than pretty much anyone I know. Hamish has been through the wars and is constantly in touch with what's going on behind the scenes as far as searching and so on concerned. And of course, Chris is an accomplished purchaser and developer, specializing in social housing. And so what we come together, and what we will be coming together fairly regularly, is to talk about what's really going on and how you, either as a prospective property owner or an existing property owner, or someone who's looking to dip their toes into what you should look out for and perhaps be aware of, things to monitor. And I'm very pleased to say that it was Hamish's idea, and we're putting it together. And we had our first one last year. If you want to look through Hamish's feed on his LinkedIn, you should see it firmly and squarely there, so you can have a listen. But starting next week, and we will occasionally also have other special guests talking about specialist areas. Sorry, you were going to say something, Hamish. Sorry.
Well, really, what I was going to say, the opportunity is there, and you don't necessarily need to go live on it. You can actually send us the questions through. Send the questions through to Gareth, or send me. I think my contact details will actually be about somewhere. But if you ask those questions in the background, we'll get those answered for you. And if we need to bring in somebody who has that specialist knowledge, we'll actually bring them on board as well, because it's far, far better to answer the questions that you are thinking of. And it doesn't, you don't need to commit to anything. And of course, it can all be done nice and quietly. We don't need to bring your name up, but we can bring your name up should you desire it.
So what we'll do? So what we'll do is get confirmation from Juliet, Chris, and Hamish, and hopefully on Friday we'll be able to announce when the first one will be. So it should be on Thursday. Not entirely sure of the time right now, but we will announce that on Monday. Please do listen in and give us your best attention. Hamish, as ever, it's been an honor and an education to find out what's going on. I'm so pleased that the British government have created at least one useful thing, the property monitoring service. So you can tell there's some nefarious
land registry.
Sorry, apologies. Land. But so until next Thursday, I wish all of you safe and a happy time. I would ask everyone. I've been saying this for the last week. This is the time of year when everything comes to an head and people start making rash decisions based on emotional reactions. Please, I ask you to put a pin in it and wait to the other side of the new year. Everything will look a lot clearer then. But I wish all of you a safe and comfortable weekend, and of course, great mental health.
And great celebrations for that new year that's arriving.
Well, yes, of course. 2024 for the win.
And another leap